Hey drinking buddies, thanks to everyone that has been coming out to our pop-up events. We'll be at Tanata Takoyaki in Little Tokyo this Friday, 3 to 4 p.m. Then at Okayama Kobo Bakery in Anaheim on Saturday, 1 to 3 p.m. And you can catch us at Burger Daddy here in Long Beach on Wednesday, September 30th, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Head to www.okayamakobo.usa.com/pop-up to check out the menus and pre-order before we sell out. See you there.
Sort of that same idea of reflecting culture back and forth. I wanted to reflect our culture back to them respectfully.
This is the Drinking Buddies Show, where we explore food, craft beverage pairings, and the entrepreneurs and tastemakers behind them. I'm Frank, founder of Drinking Buddy Artisan Snacks. On today's show, pro skater and entrepreneur Jason Rogers joins us to talk about his new beverage venture, Yatta. We'll talk about his unique childhood as a sponsored skateboarder, his previous businesses, and what inspired him to create America's first Chuhai company. Jason Rogers has been an entrepreneur and world traveler since he was a teenager. Although he tried Chuhai many times as a pro skater on tour in Japan, he forgot about it for about a decade. It wasn't until a conversation with a fellow skater over a pitcher of beer in 2017 that his attention went back to the popular Japanese beverage.
I mean, every kid was tearing around the neighborhood on a BMX bike, right? And then I got a decent one for my birthday and started racing and all that. You know, in the back of the magazines, there would be skateboards. They would look so much cooler. And so a buddy of mine got one, started skating.
Were you doing both for a little
BMX.
while?
Love BMX. I mean, I would show from a young age. I showed up at this BMX shop with all these designs for like a bike company called Excalibur. It's this little BMX shop. And I'm like, we got to make these to the owner. And he's just like, kid, you're 10 years old. What are you talking about? I'm just like, you're blowing it. You could be making so much money right now.
So at 10 years old, little entrepreneur.
Yeah, just a little maniac. But yeah, I mean, I still like BMX. Like I have an older bike, like an 80s bike. And just that era was super awesome. But then, you know, once you find skating, it was just less vehicle. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you're not connected to this massive vehicle. It's more like your body and stuff like that. So I have an older sister. She kind of pushed me into skating too, because it started to become cool around then. And she was like, oh, you should totally skate, you know? Like we were breakdancing and BMXing. And then...
I don't want to age you, but around what year is this?
Oh, Jesus Christ, man. 1980.
So the 80s. I'm just saying,
yeah,
like, if you're
80s.
Breakdancing and skating, like it's got to be from the 80s, right?
Yeah, early breakdancing, like.
And then you start skating professionally in high school.
Yeah, it was pretty quick, right? Like I started skating at like 12. It was just so crazy about it. And like being in San Diego, I grew up in San Diego, and you know, my dad was like, oh, there's a skateboard park in Del Mar. And I was like, well, what's a skateboard park? Like people just go skate around a park. And I go there and it's like, oh, there's Tony Hawk. There's the best skater in the world. That's a real person, Tony Hawk. Like you didn't think that was a real person, you know? You were
right.
Like, Tony Hawk, there's no way that's a real dude. And then went there every weekend for years until they closed the place because they had insurance issues, right? Now skateboarding is like a hazardous sport. And I think that law was passed in the late 90s, like base jumping and stuff like that.
Oh, it was added to a list of certain sports.
Yeah, that's why you see all these skate parks, public skate parks now with no insurance, right? Before that, you didn't see those. So they lost their insurance. Like you'd have to join the Boy Scouts and skate there. And so they tore that park out. But yeah, I turned pro when I was 16. On a weekend, I would go to a contest in Texas and then be like back in school. No one knew at all. I had boards with my name on it, and people would be like, why is your name on that board? And I would be like, oh, you can get it airbrushed.
You get it low key.
You know, and they're like, I don't know, it doesn't look airbrushed. But, you know, by like 12th grade, I got my own apartment and was going to school, and it was a wild way to grow up.
And you were touring the world as well. Where'd you go?
Yeah. So every summer it'd be like maybe a month in Europe, or we go to Japan, South America and stuff. It was a cool way to grow up, kind of seeing the world at a young age, you know.
In addition to skating and BMX biking, Jason became a writer at the age of 22.
Well, there was a magazine called Hapa that was English and Japanese, and I came in to do the skate stuff. So I would coordinate all the articles and all the interviews and stuff like that. And then after a while, I was just editing the whole thing. It was like surf, skate, snow, right? Remember when that was sort of a thing, and now
Right.
they're like all blown apart and their own things. And during that same time, we were opening Hot Rod Skate Shop, which was also pretty awesome. It was a wild time, right? Actually relates to creating Yatta, because during that time we were like pirates, skaters living in LA, just terrorizing the city, drinking a lot of beer. And then maybe about 27 was like, I can't be drinking all this beer. You know, I'm starting to get fat. I feel like that's like 27 is when it first starts to hit you.
I agree.
Right. And then it was like, oh, let's just switch to straight tequila. And that that made us into bigger maniacs.
That's funny. And so your shop, Hot Rod Skate Shop, is what mid-90s is based on?
Jonah Hill was our first dollar.
That's crazy.
You know, when we get new stuff in, he would always be the first cat there trying to get stuff. So a lot of those characters are based on people I know. Those kids in the movie are actual amazing skateboarders. So I know a lot of those kids.
Jason's been back and forth between LA and San Diego a few times.
Yeah, I was at a trade show and my old team manager, who's kind of like our uncle, had just started making shoes. And I was at his booth and I'd had a couple oat sodas and I was making fun of his shoes. And he was like, well, why don't you come down to San Diego and do better? You know what I mean? Help me out with the board company. And I was like, okay, well, I was going to go to school at Square to learn to build video games. Because one of the other things I've always been into is PC gaming. And, you know, I went down there and he gave me a job there and I took over their board brand and went into a meeting like, I'm changing the name, I'm changing the whole team. I didn't think they would go for it. And they're like, okay, do whatever you want. And I was like, okay, wow. And so we started a board brand called Arcade, and that was super fun. Put a lot of my friends on and guys I didn't know that eventually became friends I have to this day, and traveled around with them and made videos and made skateboards in a really cool time in skateboarding.
And at this point, you're talking true video production. I mean, you've got cameras and you're making VHS tapes that are going to be sold at skate shops and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Our first video was called Gumbo. All of the people on the team were really diverse. So it was like, oh, it's like this big pot of gumbo.
Nice.
It's just a cool word.
Yeah.
Yeah, full on filming all the time. Maybe a lot of people don't know this world and stuff. You're lighting up spots with a gas generator at 2 a.m. Spots that you're not supposed to be skating, like federal buildings and stuff like that. And it's just this super loud, just trying to get clips, you know, with kids just killing themselves. And since I had come up filming videos and stuff like that, or like having to film in videos, you know, I could kind of relate to them and what I thought they could do. So I was kind of good at bringing the best out of skaters because I knew what they were capable of. And it was just a matter of pushing them, you know.
When we return, Jason takes us through the story of Autobahn Wheel Company. Thanks for listening so far. If you enjoy the show, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Then head to www.thedrinkingbuddyshop.com and pick up some tasty pub snacks, barware, and more. Every purchase he makes helps us support small family-owned businesses in rural Japan and bring you more delicious, unique snacks to pair with your favorite beverages. Special thanks to all of you that have already started enjoying our snacks and sharing them with your buddies.
We were on like a 5-week tour of Europe and we rented a Ford Taurus for like a leg of the journey. And we were driving for 2 hours on the Autobahn, flat out, maybe 110 in this Taurus wagon. And BMWs and Mercedes are passing us like we're going backwards. And I was just, you know, I wanted to do a side brand. We would introduce a team rider to the board brand. It would look like, oh, he's on all these companies, right? The goal was to pay for an extra page in the magazine. But that was the goal, which was about $5,000 at the time. And that company just kind of took off and eclipsed the board company. And that's the one we kind of kept going. And after 9/11, everything kind of tanked, but it was gruesome, especially skateboards, you know, something frivolous like that, non-essential. But yeah, the wheel company, we kept going till 2015 or so, sold that. But we made really high quality wheels, really expensive. The amount of people that want to wear a Thrasher shirt is a lot. The amount of people that are actually skateboarding is very small. The amount of people that are skateboarding and going through wheels and wanting to buy expensive high performance wheels to replace them is tiny. So you could be like top tier brand, like accessory brand like that and still just barely getting by.
Ultimately, it's better to be the t-shirt maker than the wheel maker.
Yeah. Yeah. It was absolutely like, oh, we should have really thought about our streetwear program. You know what I mean?
Jason shares how he got into Chuhai.
Years ago, when we were younger, when we go to Japan, it would be like, try this. It's like, oh my God, this alcoholic soda pop. But that was a long time. Like I hadn't gone to Japan for maybe 10 years before I started working on Yatta, and kind of remembered it. It came from a conversation of just skating with my friend and being like, let's go try to find some. So he trades the Nikkei, gnarly amounts, like pension funds and things like this. But he's a skateboarder. So we're buddies and we skate a little curb. You know, we're older. So we skate this curb in Venice. And August 2017, where it was like we would go skate our curb and then we'd go get beers at Hinano's and then talk about stock market movements and stuff like that. That day, we had a great session. And I was like, you know, all the calories we just burned off, we're going to put them right back on with this pitcher of beer. And it was like, oh, you know, I wish someone would make something lighter. Why are there no really good light beers? You know, this is late 2017. So there was no, the RTD space was club cocktails were still in the cold box, right? And not your father's root beer at like 400 calories. But the idea that day was let's short the beer market. I just think people are kind of over this 400 calorie birthday cake IPA sort of thing that was happening. And my buddy's like, let's go get some Chuhai. I was like, Shochu fruit juice? What the hell is it? And he's like, yeah, I think it's like sparkling. Like we were still unsure, right? Because in Japan, it's like, if you don't know what it is, the packaging isn't going to tell you. It's the same for like sake and things like that. So the next day we went to like 4 different Asian markets and we couldn't find any. The only one we found was J-Pop canned Chuhai, and it's in a bottle and it's a malt beverage. Okay, that's not it. And then there's the one that Sangria imports. That's kind of the only one. And it said Chuhai USA on it. We were just like, what the hell? Where are the strong zeros?
And for those that don't know, strong zeros, ubiquitous in Japan. You can get them at any convenience store.
Yeah, they're gnarly. And so I was just like, how can this be? You know what I mean? Like, it's half the cold box in Japan, right? When you go into the kombini, you know, there's everything, anything you could want in Chuhai. So it was really weird. And it was like, okay, so I started researching it from there. And then by maybe like February of 2018, I was like, okay, I'm going to really try to figure this out. Okay, let me get some sent over. I talked to my friend in Japan. I was like, can you send me? And it was like $300 to send like a 24 pack. So I was just like, let me just fly there. $600. I'll spend 4 days there trying every Chuhai.
Your liver will thank you later.
Yeah, that's what I did, man. You know, I got to my hotel room like the night I got there. I was in Shibuya, and right outside my door was a vending machine full of strong zeros, like all kinds of different Chuhais, right? You know, I hadn't had it in like 10 years. So I was like, this is it. I'm either going to start working on this or I'm not. And I buy a couple, go back to the hotel room and crack one. I'm just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Okay, I'm doing this. And then I'm flying home from that first trip. I get off the plane and turn my phone back on, and it's my buddy that trades the Nikkei with a link that says Coca-Cola launching Chuhai. I was like, oh my God. You know, I saw they were just launching in Kyushu, and now they're countrywide.
You knew you better get to the US really quickly.
Yeah, it was kind of a race, right? So like the 2.5 years since then, it's been every day checking friggin' Brewbound and looking for another Chuhai, just like, oh no. But I mean, at some point we're going to need other people to come in to sort of validate our category. I'm sure they will. I've actually already talked to some people from some of the majors that are like, oh, we're looking at you. And
right. So, they probably want to see you validated in the market first.
Yeah.
And then they'll, because they're big. They can't just drop a new category and it not do well.
Yeah. I mean, they're long to dip their toes into things. So then from there, it was like, okay, let me figure this out. And I'm Googling Shochu. What's Chuhai? It breaks down to Shochu highball. And Shochu is a distilled spirit that's actually like 2x the sake market in Japan, but yet no one here really knows what it is. And the best Shochu comes from Kagoshima. And my mom's from Kagoshima, and I've never seen it presented on the net really in any way. Or, okay, this is weird. This is a sign. You know what I mean? I've never seen Kagoshima talked about in anything. And it's where the best Shochu comes from. Okay. And so I would go get barley shochus and sweet potato shochus. And I'm just like, oh my God, this tastes harsh. And trying to make Chuhais out of it, it was just like, this is not going to work. How are they doing this? And then I saw some of the stuff that people are doing in Okinawa, like around the military bases, and they were using a clear shochu. And I was like, okay, what's that? And at this point, I started reaching out to people. Shochu Danji, Christopher Pellegrini, are like the Yodas of shochu. And they gave me information, but The type of shochu we use is called Korui, and it's like a completely different liquor than regular shochu. And it's clear and it's just distilled a bunch of time. During this time, I actually listened to your podcast with Paul from Nankai.
Paul Nakayama, yeah.
Yeah, I reached out to him.
Oh, really?
I was just like Googling, like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing, right? We have no licenses at this point. I'm just trying to figure out what this is and how to do it. And I'm just like, would you, sell me, to use as a base? He's like, dude, no, man, this stuff is so expensive. and I still talk to him and stuff like that. So,
well, he's doing black sugar from Amami Island, so very specific.
I mean, and I know if I talk about it, he can't talk about it, but like, I think the most centenarians come from there. Like one of the oldest people that's ever lived, his quote is, I drink a cup of shochu every day. That's my secret. There's an island with just the most people over 100 on Earth.
Right.
And they're all drinking this shochu.
Okinawa is also in that, I think they call them blue zones, right? With a huge percentage of centenarians. And that's definitely part of it. That and the pork and the fact that they're always busy. Like they'll be 100 years old, but they're going down to the preschool to volunteer every day.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it was just bumpy road trying to figure out what the hell this thing was. It probably took, a good 6 months just to figure out how they were doing this. And then a year to find someone who could supply this very specific type of shochu.
Now, you used a broker for that?
He was a buddy of mine that was also a broker. And so it was like, hey, we're looking for this. He's like, okay, well, I'll try to find someone. And we found a couple people. So we have someone in backup. But the spot we use, this 200-year-old family-owned spot on the Kiso River. And it's beautiful, and flew out there. And I think I bought a ticket 2 days before I flew out. Because he's like, I got a spot. I want you to meet with the owner. And he's this 63-year-old Japanese guy that his lineage goes all the way back. And we bonded over cats. One of his shochus had a cat on it. And I was like, oh, I love cats. I have a translator who was a skateboarder. I was just like, I'm going to be in Japan in 2 days. Is anyone near Nagoya a translator? And he's like, this skateboarder I'm Facebook friends with was like, hey, I'm there. I can make it. I actually am off on that day. And he took us to this onsen. You get all these different courses and stuff like that, and full kimonos. And, this place sees one party a day, 2 parties a day, max. This owner of the distillery took us there. He's like, oh, I come here for special occasions. And it was awesome. I'm going to stick with these guys as long as I can, at least for our Korui shochu. So, as we were doing this, someone put me in contact with one of the Franzia family members, and he had a connection for this specific type of shochu, and he lost it 18 months ago. And he's like, I haven't had this for 18 months. Well, okay, we can talk about distribution, these sorts of things. But I was like, he wanted the exclusive for California. And I was like, okay, no, but it sounds like you just want this. He's like, I have 500 accounts that just want to make cocktails out of this, because soju and shochu under 24%, you can sell with a beer and wine license. So he's like, I got 500 accounts that just want shochu. And I was like, okay, it sounds to me like you don't really care about the brand name. You just want to supply these places. And we are trying to figure out how we can do sake through Yatta. And it just kind of didn't fit, because, Yatta would be more like a fun times company and just simpler, more of a highball company. So we started another brand for him called Inari, and that's not really out yet, but we're about to fill those shochus for him. And I was like, look, wow, we could do some of these gold medal sakes and cask aged shochus. We have access to a 3-year aged in sherry cask shochu, and it tastes like a whiskey. And if you have a beer and wine spot and you're serving Asian food, the kaku highball is ubiquitous in Japan, right? So you can kind of serve something like that. So we're like, okay, we could just do this through Inari. And so that's how we're kind of separating things. One, a more traditional company, and then one a little wackier. Because we're probably going to do like a agave tequila highball at some point, and a whiskey highball and stuff like that. But I need to link up with some sake sommeliers. You know what I mean? It's so complex, right? Just the sake world is, I don't want to enter it and be disrespectful or not know what I'm talking about.
Well, there's lots of resources to help you with that.
Yeah, podcasts.
Yeah. Jason shares how he selected Yatta as the name of his brand.
I was kind of just Googling like cool Japanese words. I don't know how many people actually say Yatta. I'm sure they do, but like all the dudes I know in Japan are just skaters. But I like the aesthetics of the word first. And then I started looking at definitions. Oh, it means ta-da or voila, right? Same sort of thing. We did it. And I was like, oh, that's perfect, you know? And then I came across the Yatta song. It's like a comedy troupe taking a dig at the government. And the video's insane. And I was just like, oh my God, this seals it. After I found out it was kind of a dig at the government for saying all the Japanese people need are green tea leaves. And they're wearing green tea leaves around their crotch. And I was just like, okay, wow, this is amazing.
Did you know they were on Jimmy Kimmel?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that one too.
One of these days, we're going to have them out here. We're going to get them back together.
Jason shares his plans for growing Yatta.
We're already getting started on the next 3 flavors. So we want to get to like a 6-pack variety pack and then strong tall boys, baby. We get cost down to where it's $3.50 or something like that for like a 9% tall boy. We just got to get our numbers up, but eventually just get more SKUs out, sort of have doors that are a little bit more ubiquitous. We have access to larger platforms of promotion and stuff like that. We don't really have anywhere ubiquitous to send people. So in the near term, we just got it approved in 22 total wines. So that doesn't mean every single one's going to take us. One's in Tennessee, so I don't know if we're going to do that. But 11 are in California. Okay, once we're in those, we can start to extend the line, do a variety 6-pack, and then hopefully, I think, once we scale up just a bit, I think we can get down to sort of a macro craft beer price on a 12-pack. It's where we kind of want to live. And just do fun stuff.
Jason talks about overseas expansion.
Before this hit, China contacted us and they were like, we want the first American Chuhai. And I was like, oh, I want you to have the first American Chuhai. And, they were like, how big's your factory? I'm like, dude, it's big, man. What, how many containers can you fill a month? And I was like, what? Call the co-packer. How many containers can we fill a month? They're like, a lot, dude. What? And I get back to China, like, we got you. What do you want to do? And then COVID hit. Like right around then, it was like, damn it. So we'll get back to that. But Japan probably is likely the first place will be available outside the US. Sort of that same idea of reflecting culture back and forth. I wanted to just expand people's mind on different cultures, reflect their culture back to them respectfully in the same way they've done with sneaker culture and stuff like that. When I was younger and I would go to Japan, maybe in the late 90s, you would go to a store and it would be like Jordan 1s in every size and every color. And you're just like, what in the hell? How are they doing this? And this was really before sneaker culture really got insane. I bought some Patrick soccer shoes. I don't know it's pretty obscure, but they had every color, every size. The Japanese are really good at picking out the best of a different culture. A lot of the great designers in streetwear and, architecture, art, all these things are in Japan, you know what I mean? And they're very heavily influenced by the United States. And so let me try to respectfully reflect back what they're doing.
Well, I think you're in a space that you can do that because you have the freedom to experiment with Chuhai and with Shochu in a way that maybe they wouldn't feel comfortable doing in Japan.
Yeah. And there's already things we're working on that are kind of, they haven't done before. But I mean, if you're starting with a base, like it is so filtered that it's just like Korui Shochu. There's alcohol water. So you can kind of lay anything over it. So we've been experimenting with other things. So hopefully we get there. It's going to be a lot of SKUs. Japanese Chuhai is just like hundreds of SKUs, all different. Salted watermelon, strawberry Pocky. This one has chicken wings all over it, and it's good for chicken wings. And like limited editions and things like that. So hopefully we can do that for certain, let's say, we do a Mitsuya Nijiya Marukai. Oh, this one, the pomegranate's only available here, and this one's only available here. And then send people on a treasure hunt to get all 3 and send in a photo. And
let's get into pairings. Thank you very much. You gave me an opportunity to try your first 3 flavors. So you've got the Yuzu lemon, the Concord grape, and the pineapple. Yep. And like you're saying, it is extremely smooth. It does not feel like you're drinking alcohol.
It's dangerous, right?
It is dangerous. I say the best equivalent in the US would be something like a wine cooler, but not a wine cooler because it's no wine better quality. Days. Yeah. Now, you have 3 more flavors you're working on for that 6-pack?
Yeah. We're working on a Fuji apple. So maybe some of the cider lovers will be like, oh, I can have something lighter. And a ginger and lime. And the third one's kind of up for grabs between a watermelon and a blood orange. What do you think?
That's tough. Those are both
Right?
really good. Those are really strong for summer. I would say go for the watermelon first and then the blood orange, but that's just me.
That's the way I'm leaning. But I have some of my buddies are like, bro, you got to do the blood orange, man. So
I feel like you could release that and then you can do a blood orange as a limited release, or you could do it next summer. I mean, you're going to end up, like you said, with hundreds of SKUs because you go to a Japanese convenience store and there'll be an entire part of the fridge, like the freezer is full of just different varieties of Chuhai. It's crazy.
Yeah. And there's the 3% alcohol versions for women, the beautiful packaging. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do. And we're the only people at the club right now. We kind of just get weird. But it comes down to a matter of shelf space and all these things. I have a meeting with someone that deals with the 7-Elevens in San Diego, and it's like, hey, maybe we can do an exclusive flavor just for 7-Elevens and things like that. And when you have that kind of freedom, it's not like, I don't know how many different styles of beer you could possibly do. If you could do one just for, you know what I mean? A brewery would be constrained a bit, you know?
Right. And they may only want to do so many styles. It's not the same as having the freedom to do this many flavors.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's pretty easy to do them. It's just a matter of testing and finding your taste profile you like. But for me, it's kind of all I drink.
Yeah, you mentioned that you'd like to have it with dinner pretty much nightly.
Sure. Yeah. In Japan, it's very much tied to food. I mentioned the one with chicken wings all over it. Like chicken wings and Chuhai are, ubiquitous. So
some of your recommended pairings, you had hot wings, karaage chicken, like the Japanese style fried chicken.
Love it.
American fried chicken.
I mean, not all chicken, right? Like ramen, I'm drinking it. Sandwich, I'm drinking it. It's just kind of my go-to. Like even before all this, I wasn't like a super big beer guy. And then mixed drinks are just gnarly. These cocktails in a can, it's just like, if I'm like out skating with the homies in Santa Monica and we're skating our curb, I don't want to like stop and crush an old fashioned. Like if running canyon, I don't want to get to the top and like have a gin and tonic, so, but there's time and place for it. I was always like, I'd rather just go to a bar and get a cocktail. But now it's like, that sort of space is making a lot more sense.
So it's a beverage that you can take with you. You can have a quick meal with it, like you mentioned, pizza and ramen sandwiches. So you don't have to have a sit-down formal dinner. It doesn't have to be a formal pairing. It's much in line with the brand. It's fun. It's active.
Yeah. I mean, it's very much working class. Like in Japan, it's blue collar.
Yeah, it's not an expensive beverage.
Right. A salary man can go grab 2 on the way home and crush one on the train, and then when he gets home, have another one and be good.
My connection to it was always at karaoke.
Yeah.
I mean, you could order that and you wouldn't even notice you're drinking it.
Yeah. Yeah, it goes down really easy. After about 3 of them, you're like, wait a second, I'm a little drunk. It's a full 5%, so it's like a serious beer. Not an IPA and all that, but only 99 calories. And so I think once these hard seltzers I don't want to dump on them. They sort of hoed the road for us, right? When we started, White Claw was in our deck, but also club cocktails and Mike's Hard Lemonade and stuff like that. They were super caloric. Hard seltzer is like, it was maybe 1 year old at that time. I think White Claw was like 1 year old. And I was like, do kids know what seltzer is? Like, is this the 20s? Are we shooting each other in the face with seltzer bottles? Watered down Zima. But still, the idea was like, people are gonna start moving away from beer. And that's exactly what happened. I underestimated how desperate people were to move away from beer. And I mean, now the hard seltzer segment is larger than all of craft beer put together.
Yeah, there's also that unpredictable generational shift. So Gen Z is drinking something different than Gen X and millennials. I'd say Gen X and millennials were into those two things, the craft cocktail scene, and they picked up what the boomers were doing with their home brew clubs and turned it into a giant industry of craft beer. But now the youngest generation doesn't necessarily want to have a high ABV beverage or a high calorie beverage.
They just want to get alcohol in them in the easiest way. You know what I mean?
Right.
In the same way it was looked down upon in Japan. It was like trashy people drink Chuhai. Even Shochu is like, there was like some word that's like, that guy smells like Shochu.
Shochu kusai.
Yeah. And then after a while, the younger generations were just like, who cares? Like, F you, we're drinking this. We're keeping our calories down. And I think people just want something that's light. You know, they're watching their diet and eating ketogenic and all these sorts of things. And it's like, I'm going to drink a few beers and like, it's a Big Mac.
Yeah, they don't want the beer gut anymore. Jason shares where you can pick up Yatta.
Pizzanista was one of our first accounts, some of the
Nice.
best pizza in Los Angeles. Owner is a former skater of the year. So he's a friend of mine. So that was really cool to get in there early on. So we had some distribution lined up just within the Asian space because there's so many Asian restaurants and things like this, you know, a lot of them without liquor licenses, just beer and wine. I was like, God, can we really get to all these places? And it was ready to go. And then COVID hit.
Right.
And it was like, okay, so do we just wait till this is gone? You know, and we had a warehouse full of stuff. So we had to burn. You know, with our old skateboard companies, it was always like we'd rely on a supplier or a distributor or all these things. It's like, you know what? Let's just try to do this from the ground up. Because a lot of my friends are getting smoked right now. The skate shop down the street, surf shop, ZJ's, it's been there 33 years. It just closed. Main Street, Santa Monica looks like Mad Max. There's nothing left, really. You know, a lot of friends are like, hey, is there something, you know, I'm like, well, you can drive this stuff around. Or so it's like trying to pluck the right guys from my friend acquaintance pool. And man, a couple of them really started crushing it. And hopefully we could build something for them where they have a place to be and care about and not rely on massive distribution. I mean, distributors, hey, fax me anyway, but to really just own our own footprint and see if we can do it for as long as we can do it, at least in California, maybe New York.
Well, I think you're part of a bigger movement, and not just in beverages, but food and beverage. Because of COVID, the supply chains were all messed up. Mm-hmm. And distribution was completely messed up. Everything's backed up. So you're at a forefront that I see a lot of farms and ranches doing the same thing. I've started ordering meat directly from branches.
Wow.
Because I can get higher quality and I know it's going directly to the farmer versus initially, let's say March, April, when it was a hardcore lockdown, they were freaking out. You remember at the grocery store saying, oh, you can only take one package of chicken and one package of beef. Yeah. So I think there is a new supply chain being built from the ground up, and it's more localized and it relies more on individual companies and these guys that are working with you.
Yeah. Some of the legal stuff makes it harder because we're spirit based. So we can't really ship direct to customer and the weight of beverage. You know, we've had a lot of people hit us up from like places we're just not at or probably won't be at for a long time. Like, I don't know when we're going to look at Topeka, you know what I mean? And it's like, but I would love to get it to them. And it would be nice if every state wasn't its own country with insane laws that are all different. You know what I mean?
Well, that's where all the craft beer trades come from. It's the same thing. It's so hard
It's very,
to get craft beer outside of where it's produced.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it'll be, other than the big macro sort of craft stuff, I think it'll be more localized, right? Where it's like, this is the brewery for your area, or this is the one you're loyal to. And you're getting fresher beer and stuff like that. So that's great. But, you know, we'll see how we can do. At some point, we might make partnerships and things like that, but it would have to fit. You know, we wouldn't want to be the 18,000th SKU on a list. Here's your 35% margin. And it's like, hey. But I have enough friends that are willing to drive stuff around. So, you know, we're trying to build it up. We'll see. We're complete noobs this thing. I mean, we have some people that are sort of giving advice and people at larger companies that I can turn to and stuff like that. But really, we're just like, let's just look at this thing with new eyes and just see what we can do, what works for us.
Thanks so much to Jason Rogers. You can learn more about Yatta by visiting drinkyatta.com and following them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at drinkyatta. Jason is on Instagram at Jason T. Rogers. Coming up on the Drinking Buddy Show, Yuto Someya joins us to share the story of Yaigaki, the first sake brand to start brewing in the United States. We'll talk about their founding centuries ago in Japan, their pioneering move to Los Angeles, and their new standalone brand, Roga. Thanks for listening to the Drinking Buddy Show. Be sure to subscribe and share it with your buddies. Check out our latest artisanal snack offerings at www.thedrinkingbuddyshop.com. Connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Take care and drink well. Hey drinking buddies, thanks to everyone that has been coming out to our pop-up events. We'll be at Tanata Takoyaki in Little Tokyo this Friday, 3 to 4 p.m. Then at Okayama Kobo Bakery in Anaheim on Saturday, 1 to 3 p.m. And you can catch us at Burger Daddy here in Long Beach on Wednesday, September 30th, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Head to www.okayamakobo.usa.com/pop-up to check out the menus and pre-order before we sell out. See you there.